The top 50 players in NBA history. It's not a list that's usually talked about because top 5s and top 10s are a lot more interesting, but what makes the top 50 so compelling is the fact that the NBA went out of their way and named the top 50 of all time. 23 years ago. Before Kobe Bryant ever played an NBA game, before LeBron, and while Michael Jordan was still winning championships and inspiring this generation of players. So we're gonna need an updated list, especially for when all of these current players' careers are all said and done. And the first current player that comes to mind when we're talking top 50 all time is, of course, LeBron James. I mean, forget top 50, he's easily top 5 all time, and we all know why. And then there's a guy like Kevin Durant, who in my opinion has the ability to go down as the second or third greatest small forward ever. As for now, I probably got him 4th behind LeBron, Larry Bird, and Dr. J, and I think he's got all the ability in the world to one day land in that number 2 spot, because he has just as much pure skill and scoring ability as any small forward we've ever seen. He's already been a league MVP and a 4-time scoring champion. But what he does in these next few years is really gonna determine where he ends up. I think he's starting to catch Dr. J, but he's still got a long way to go if he ever wants to surpass the 3-time MVP in Larry Bird. Either way though, without question, KD is already top 50 all time. And another easy addition after that has gotta be Steph Curry, who some of you might not agree with, but I think he's already the second best point guard ever. Most lists put John Stockton and Oscar Robertson ahead of Curry, but while Stockton was a much better defender and passer than Curry is, Steph's a 2-time MVP and a 3-time NBA champion that really has revolutionized the game. Stockton was always known as a great shooter too, but he's still got nothing on the best shooter in history. Plus, Curry's career still isn't even over yet. And once Durant leaves, I think we're really going to see him return to his MVP form again next season. And as for how he stacks up to Oscar Robertson, of course, like most of us, I haven't seen much of Robertson's game. But from what I know and the research I've done, Oscar has had an incredible career, and one of the reasons he's always been ranked so high is because of that triple-double season. But I mean, Russ just did it 3 years in a row, and that doesn't even put him close to the top 3 conversation. Oscar was incredible, but I mean, they also didn't even have a 3-point line back then. So I gotta give the edge to Curry. And with all that being said, I think Curry's definitely a lock for top 50. And so is James Harden, who's proven he's quickly becoming one of the best scorers of all time. He can score from anywhere on the court and in any way imaginable. He's led the league in scoring, assists, won an MVP, and will probably be the runner-up this year. I don't know where he ranks among all-time shooting guards, but he's definitely one of the league's 50 best. Another current player that just retired, but we'll still include him here, is Dirk Nowitzki. Not only did Dirk lead the 2011 underdog Mavs team to knocking Kobe Bryant out of the playoffs and beating LeBron James for the NBA championship, but don't forget the man's a former MVP, and he was another guy that revolutionized the game, being one of the first real stretch big men we've ever seen. And another guy we have to include that just retired is Dwayne Wade, the 3rd best shooting guard in NBA history. D-Wade never won an MVP, but in his best season put up 37, 5, and 2, and even with Shaq, he single-handedly led the Miami Heat to their 2006 championship, all while winning Finals MVP. And that's when it was really made clear just how good the man was. Flash was never the best outside shooter, but that was really the only weakness in his game, which is why he's been known as one of the best players in the league for nearly his entire career. And then next up is Chris Paul. Now CP3 has never won an MVP and never even been to the NBA Finals, but that hasn't stopped him from having an all-time great career. For years the man was known as the clear-cut best point guard in the league, really on both ends of the floor. He's a 4-time assist leader and a 6-time leader in steals, and has always been thought of as one of the best leaders in NBA history. I mean, even in the All-Star game, with all the best players in the league on the court, players would still know that Chris Paul deserved the ball and that he was the leader of the team. And the only competition for maybe being a better leader would be a guy like Jason Kidd or Magic Johnson. But now that we've looked at players who have already done enough to land on that list, let's take a look at players that have all the potential to get there, but aren't quite there just yet. And the first one is one of the most likely, in Giannis and this man's potential is really off the charts. Most players hit their strides between 27 and 30 years old, and the fact that Giannis is already putting up 27 and 12 and is about to win his first MVP at 24 years old is flat out scary for the rest of the league. He's definitely not one of the most skilled in the league, but he's one of the most dominant. Hopefully next year though he keeps up this pace of improvement and his game doesn't take a step backwards. Even if he stays at this pace though, I definitely think that he's a lock for top 50 within a few years. But to get there, the man's still gonna have to prove himself in the playoffs. Then there's Kyrie Irving, who's undoubtedly been the second best point guard in the league for years now. He's got the best handles of all time, is one of the most clutch players in the league, and as great as he is in the regular season, has always been even better when the playoffs come around. But since he's never been known as a great defender, I think now that he's entering his prime, he's gonna have to step his offensive game up to the next level if he ever wants to make top 50. Now next, someone else off to a great young start is Nikola Jokic. There's never been a center like Jokic that has an all-around game like he does. He'll have a long way to go to finish off as one of the league's 50 best, but the foundation for him is definitely already there. But here's where the controversy comes in with Russell Westbrook. Some Westbrook fans might say he's already top 50, some might say he can be there one day, and other people could say he shouldn't be on that list at all. And at this point it really just comes down to stats alone will get you there, because that's all Russ has got going for him. He's got an MVP, 3 straight triple-double seasons, is a 2-time scoring leader and a 2-time assist leader, but has never been efficient, hasn't been great in the playoffs, has no championships, and might not ever. So it'll be real interesting to see where he ends up. And then the next guy is Klay Thompson. Even if Curry's the best, I think Klay's easily the second best shooter of all time. And Thompson has the potential to be one of the league's 50 best all time. But I'm not sure if he can make it there in his limited role. But then again, even though mostly every guy currently on the top 50 was at one time or another the main star on their team, there are a couple of exceptions like Scottie Pippen and Kevin McHale that show that it's possible for a second option player to make it on the list. And I mean, Klay holds a countless amount of 3-point records, some of the greatest shooting performances ever, and let's not forget just how good he is on defense, and the fact that he's still a 3-time NBA champion. He's been playing at the same statistical pace for the past 5 years now, but with how much he purely uses his shot to be effective, he could prove to be a threat for a very long time. That is, if he stays with the Warriors. If not, I think he can prove himself worthy much sooner. Next, there's Anthony Davis, who for years has had all the skills to be one of, if not the best power forward ever, in terms of skill on the court and statistics. But none of that will ever come true if he can't win in the playoffs, or even make it to the playoffs. A big part of what stopped him up until this point though was being on the Pelicans. So that'll finally change next season, and we'll get to see just how much of a difference AD can make on a winning team. And from that point on, it'll really define how his legacy's laid out. And then there's Joel Embiid, who some people have already said has the most complete game out of any center in NBA history. He's off to a great start, already putting up 27 and 13 in his 3rd year in the league, but then again he's only played 3 years in the league. And a lot can happen between now and the time he retires, including injuries, which hopefully don't happen, because if he wants to be an all-time great, unlike what he's done to start his career, he's gonna have to stay healthy from here on out. And then we gotta mention the other 76er in Ben Simmons, who, just like his teammate, it's way too early to judge, but he started himself on the right path as a 6'10" point guard. At this rate, it'd be no surprise for him to be top 50 one day, but his game and his shot still got a lot of developing to do. And then we got a tricky one in Damian Lillard. Dame right now is a top 3 point guard in the league, and has been for a couple of years now. He's got everything it takes to be an all-time great, but he's never been the best in any one thing. He's already 28 years old, and his loyalty to Portland and their lack of playoff success could cost him some all-time rankings. So right now, I don't think Dame can finish top 50 all-time, but it's still a possibility. Another person it's way too early to decide, but we have to mention because of the hype, is Luka Doncic. He put up 21, 8, and 6 as a rookie, and if his career pans out as good as everyone thinks it will, the man will be top 50 one day. But like I said, it's way too soon to tell. Two players that are in an exact opposite situation though are Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. This season, both these guys had career years and have been the 2 best two-way players in the league. PG broke out and put up 28, 8, 4, and 2 this season, and was an early MVP candidate. But he's in a weird spot when you think of all time, because he's always been a top player in the league, but he's got to do more in the playoffs. And he's got to keep up this regular season pace for the next few years, and I think he's at least got to win a championship to be taken seriously on that list. On the other hand, Kawhi Leonard has the slight edge over PG, and you gotta think that right now he's as close as anyone can get to being a lock for the top 50. He's just gotta have some success on his own, because as we know, he's already been a finals MVP and an NBA champion, but that was when he was on a team with 3 future Hall of Famers. By himself, he has established himself as arguably the league's best defender and put up 26 a game this year. So now all we gotta do is give it a couple more years and let Kawhi really prove himself on his own. But that's all the current players that are top 50 all time right now, and a few current players that I think can end up being on that list in the future. And all this isn't even to mention the players that have already retired and need to be put on that list, like Allen Iverson, Tracy McGrady, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Reggie Miller, maybe, Paul Pierce, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen. I'm not going to go through the top 50 list and say who will replace who because that's when the real arguments start, but I will say a lot of room needs to be made for all of these players. Because out of the current guys in the league that are top 50 and the retired players I just mentioned, it adds up to 17 players and 17 spots that need to be made. So a lot of people gotta go, and I'm not going to go through the entire list and say who replaces who, but I will say the first place to start is all the guys from the 50s and 60s that aren't on the Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain level. Guys like Dave Cowens, Dolph Schayes, and George Mikan. Because there's a difference between the 50 players that had the biggest impact on the league and helped it get to where it is today, and the 50 greatest basketball players of all time. And if you put George Mikan up against Joel Embiid in a one-on-one, I'm sure we all know how that would go. Even some 90s players can be kicked off that list too, like James Worthy and Robert Parrish, that I don't think there's room for anymore. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts on all this, so comment down below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next video.